My name is Manuel Villanueva. I'm the founder of Man Canine. When I was young, back in the 60s, 68, 69, I remember we had a little TV. I would sit in front of the TV and watch the Lassie. And I would watch that show over and over and over. Also, I was addicted to watching Rin Tin Tin. It's this a German Shepherd. And I would sit there, and my mom would be like, watch cartoons or something like that. But I always wanted to see that show. I never knew why. It was kind of in my genetics, in the sense that I would want to watch a dog show versus a cartoon if there was, if I had a choice. I would start reading about dogs in the library. That was it. I would gravitate towards the dog books all the time. My sister would be the same, as my mom would read something else. Nope, I want to read about dogs and the behavior, psychology, whatever I could get my hands on. Then in the 70s, I saw a movie that really changed it all, where it was a group of Dobermans. It was the Doberman gang. And they were trained to rob a bank. And it was about, I believe, 5 Dobermans. And the dogs would go into the bank and run the show pretty much, and sit on the counter and growl. And that really turned my wheels to where I fell in love at that point with the Doberman. From that point on, I remember saying, after watching that movie, I want a Doberman when I grew up, and I want to train him. A few years later, we moved to Guadalajara, and this is in Mexico. And my dad said, hey, now you could have a dog here. I was about 15. I got it at 16. I got my first dog. It was a boxer. I trained him in obedience as much as I could. The next year, I bought a Doberman. And as soon as I bought the puppy, I said, okay, here's my Doberman. I've always wanted one. I'm going to train him just like those dogs. I would constantly be educating myself on reading. And any book, a dog book, I don't care what it was. Back in the day in Mexico, there was 1 or 2 magazines that would be imported that would talk about dog training. And I would just, from page 1 to the last page, I would read. So I started applying some of the things and methods and what made sense to me. So at 8 weeks, I started that puppy. And I realized, I discovered that when you start very young, you imprint a lot of the good behaviors. I took that on to train that dog all the way through obedience, protection, and things like that. I was very convinced that, hey, if I start young with these dogs and I use food with some discipline, combine both, we get tremendous results. It's amazing. So at that point, I was serious about dog training. I was still in school. I was going to be a veterinarian, and I was going to college for that. But I went to Chicago, took a course, a light course of dog training with somebody we knew. It was like about 2 weeks. So it wasn't a long course, but it was just more or less confirmation that what I was doing back in Guadalajara was correct. So I trained this dog. I trained my sister's dog, my neighbor's dog. And then I decided to open up a business at 18, dog training business. I advertised, and the business was doing tremendously well. We started breeding dogs. We started showing dogs. At that time, when I got married, we were building the kennel. Business was booming. And that's when I came to San Diego to breed a dog. We were breeding Dobermans. The breeder asked me if I wanted to meet a tremendous trainer. His name was Fawn Johnson. She said, he's well known. He wins top awards in dog training. His dogs are excellent. So in my mind, I said, yeah, sure, I'll meet him. Why not? He's just another dog trainer. Well, son of a gun, he wasn't just another dog trainer. So I get to his office, and I sit there in the office and was looking at these photos he had of 1958, 1951, and winning trophies and ribbons and training police dogs. As I sat there, I thought, oh my God, it's the real deal. This man is amazing. So I met him. I saw his police dog training at that time. And I was impressed. Amazing. It was amazing the things he was able to do with these dogs and the cops. I was convinced this was my life. This is what I was going to do for a living, right? And he shook my hand and he said, do you want a job? And I said at that time, no, because we're doing great in Mexico. Thanks a lot for the offer, but I'm not going to do this. I'm busy down there. in my mind, we're building the biggest kennel in Guadalajara at that time. We were very well known. We were one of the most expensive dog trainers in the city. There was 2 million people in the city, but we were doing amazingly well financially, very stable. So when they offered that job, I really didn't need it. After a few months, they called me again. Finally, I told my wife, you know what, let's do this. Let me go up to San Diego. I met this man, he's amazing. Let me spend about 4 or 5 months with him, 6 months. If I learn from him, oh, we're gonna take over Mexico. That was my goal. You know, we're gonna be the top trainer in Mexico. So I came up with that idea that I was gonna be here only a few months. And life has its, its ups and downs. And at that time, because of my wife's health, she had to come up here for treatment. And the doctor said, you can't go back. She has to stay here for about a year. And everything worked out well because at that time, Mr. Johnson was ready to retire. So I was under him before his retirement for about 6 years. And then he said, hey, we have a business that we want you to run and maybe sell and sell to you if it goes well, and then take it from there. Mr. Johnson was like a father to me. I didn't know anybody. He took me into his house. He treated me like a family member. He opened up his house, his heart, and his knowledge. I mean, he was an amazing man. He was highly respected. He won a FIDO award. And the FIDO award is given to one person every so many years, and it's just to people that have dedicated, have really improved the lives of dogs in the country, right? So knowing that I was under this man motivated me to really try to gain as much knowledge as I possibly can. But he was a man that when he would not talk a lot. He would not joke around a lot. You know, he was just very quiet, right? Very serious type of man. But when he would open his mouth to give advice, you had to be ready. Everything that he said, I would really respect because I knew he had the experience more than anything. He had trained a ton of dogs. So it wasn't like somebody that had a lot of theory. No, he had hands-on practical experience. And for me, that was very convincing because I met other people that would give me advice, but you know, they handle one dog or let's say 2 dogs for 20 years. In 20 years, he handled thousands of dogs. For me, Mr. Johnson was not only a highly respected dog trainer, but he was a tremendous person. As I grew into the industry, I respected him more and more because he was so advanced for his time. Nowadays, people are going, hey, the police dog has to come off the bike as soon as he tells you release. You have to kind of have control over the police dog. The dog has to obey the handler immediately. Well, for me, that's old news. That was back in the 50s when he was developing dogs. That's his philosophy. The industry didn't catch up to us, thanks to him, until maybe a few years back, where across the board, the trainers are going, yes, he has to call off, he needs to be allowed, he has to be directed, he has to down at point, all these things. And the reason it made sense to Mr. Johnson back then was if I have a golden, a civilian has a dog that's extremely obedient, why is this police dog out of control? He should be more obedient than this golden. There were very few professionals like him. The police departments needed dog trainers. They wouldn't go to him, they started training their own dogs. And that sincerely, I could say that's when I saw the industry decline in quality because they were not professionals. They didn't know how to problem solve. And then we started importing dogs from Europe. And these dogs that would come from Europe were very strong dogs, very strong. When I started with him, the dogs that were police dogs were dogs that were donated. They were Humane Society dog pounds, backyards. Those dogs were the ones that we developed from zero to search, article search, apprehension, agility, all these things. The dogs that came from Europe already knew all these things. The problem with those dogs was that they were extremely alpha, strong, aggressive. But even though they're that type of dog, Mr. Johnson insisted that they would be obedient. So I could not show a dog when I was under him that would not obey me. If we were going to sell a dog, he would say, is that dog ready? And boy, he better be ready. Right? So that meant he better obey me with the obstacle, with the release of the bite, with calling off, with all these things, because his reputation was on the line. And I learned, you know what, this is the way you train police dogs. And our dogs have done tremendously well. Our police dogs out on the field, they release, come off the bite, they obey the handler and all these things. And mainly is because I follow him. So Mr. Johnson has been an inspiration, but also has really led the industry in the control of a police dog. I've seen it over the years. That dog training is passed on from generation to generation. I was very fortunate that when I met Mr. Johnson, he was in his 60s, late 60s, and asking him, how did you learn to dog train? Well, first of all, when I got here, he said, okay, you're going to work for me. You're going to train. I need you to read 2 books. One book was written by a gentleman, William Kohler. It's an old book. The second book was Konrad Most. He was a German dog trainer back from World War I, and he was the godfather of dog training back in Germany. I read those books like the Bible. I mean, I read every single page. You learn a lot from those books. He wanted me to make sure that I understood the method that he was using. I asked him where he learned, and he learned from Carl Spitz. The Carl Spitz was the gentleman that trained the Doberman Gang for the movie. So he was surprised that I knew about him. He's like, what do you mean you know about Carl Spitz? And I go, oh yeah, I'm a fanatic. I love that guy. He trained the Doberman Gang. And he's like, yeah, he did. So Mr. Johnson actually learned from Carl Spitz. Well, Carl Spitz learned from Konrad Most. So the line of that's passed on for me and my son is the line of German dog training, but very traditional, very strong, right? But we had to soften it up. So the combination of these 2 techniques have really worked out well. Mr. Johnson's way of training, dog training, was the traditional. He didn't believe in treats. He didn't believe in reward. All we had to do is pet the dog and tell him, good boy. On occasions, I would use treats, right? But he didn't want that, so I would respect that until I took over the business. That's when I started applying more of my philosophy, which was a mix of like mixed martial arts, right? You take the best techniques you can from every dog sport, from Schutzhund to ring sport, KMPV, whatever, right? And you mix that and bring the best out of the dog, create something that kind of piece of art from that dog, right? The idea for me was that if this dog likes treats, I'm going to use treats. If he likes a ball, I'm going to use a ball. Whatever motivates the dog to obey. And if he doesn't obey, I could always back up with some compulsion, but I'm going to try positive reinforcement in the beginning. And we were tremendously successful, and we grew. The philosophy that we use up to this day is that we train every individual dog. They're different. Not all of them, like people, dogs are not the same. So we train every dog. My philosophy is, let's give this person the best service we possibly can, but let's solve his problem. The faster, the better. We are very honest. We're very direct. If we cannot solve your problem, we will tell you it's the dog's genetics. It's not going to work out. We will not take advantage of you. That has never been my philosophy, right? We tell you the truth about a dog or the dog's temperament or even your skill to handle that dog. So my philosophy has been, like Mr. Johnson taught me, be honest, right? If it's not going to work out, you tell the client it's not going to work out. And that has really made Man Canine grow, because people have gone to other dog trainers and they've invested a lot of money without any good results. And when they come to us, you're going to get the product, the service that you deserve, and also the honesty that you deserve as a client. So Man Canine, if you approach us, you're going to find out that we are extremely honest with our training, dog training, but also our service. We have to be very, very clear in what we deliver, right? So the client understands what they have and what they don't have. And I think this has really taken us to the top in the dog training industry. So at Man Canine, you're going to find that we're completely flexible, and we have a lot of options. That's, again, experience. We have dealt with tens of thousands of dogs, and training police dogs gives us a huge advantage because we're dealing with dogs that are very high strung, emotional, powerful, right? Stubborn in many ways. So we could train police dogs. We could definitely train the average dog. It's not a challenge for us. In many cases, when people call us, their approach to dog training is only we're going to use treats, which that's the first thing we do. We try positive reinforcement. In many cases, the dog's temperament needs more than that. It's not us, it's what the dog needs, right? So people go, no, I only want to use treats. I don't want to use anything else. I don't have to use the slip collar, the prong collar, the remote collar, nothing. It's only treats. Well, they're not realistic, okay? It's not true that every dog could learn all the time just with positive reinforcement. There has to be a tool that makes the dog understand that certain behaviors will become unpleasant for him. He has to stop that behavior. In many cases, a behavior that could cause injuries or death or major injuries as well. So they're pretty much close-minded to where they go, no, I don't want to use anything else but a positive reinforcement method. So when they come to us, again, we're very realistic. We'll try that approach, but if it doesn't work, the client has to be more flexible, understand if you want to keep this dog, you want the dog to be happy and sound, you need to apply more discipline. And the discipline comes from any type of tool, from slip collars to prong collars to remote collars or halties or anything like that, right? Some people completely oppose a remote collar because they think that's inhumane or whatever, but you could be inhumane with your hand or with any other type of tool. It's how you use the tool, not the tool itself. And the tool, the remote collar, is one of the best tools available because it's like an invisible leash. If your dog needs a device that's a little bit more adaptable to what your situation is, then you want to use that device. And you're going to have a dog that's extremely dependable because we all want dependability out of our dogs. We want the dog to stop a behavior immediately. But we suggest that be open-minded. And if you do that, you're going to gain great results and develop a great relationship with your dog. You'll be able to take him anywhere, if you use the tools the right way. I was fortunate enough to put my hands on tens of thousands of dogs, from Chihuahuas all the way up to Great Danes, St. Bernards, police dogs, puppies, and everything like that. From the Humane Society to San Diego, Oceanside, St. Diego Obedience Club. I was involved with a lot of group classes and private lessons and all of that, in kennel training. And the way you become a good trainer is if you have hands-on the dog. There's a lot of people that call themselves trainers because they've handled a dog. And that's different. You could handle a dog and you could be very good with that dog. But to train other dogs, you struggle because you don't have the experience. You eventually will, right? But they find themselves that they're publicized, or the fact that they are dog trainers. Now they're dog handlers. For me, it's the dogs teach me more than the human. Okay, yeah, I learn from the mistakes that people make, but in reality, the dog is teaching me what he needs. It's really an art. I believe you have to have the natural ability, right, to train dogs. I've seen many dog trainers over the year that want to make it into a science. And it can be a science. Scientists really develop or understand animal behavior, but to apply that and to get the dog trained at a level that he needs to be trained, it's more an art. You have to feel it. You have to observe the animal. And because every dog is different, you have to adjust to that. It can't be science. You can't apply science to that. To many other things, possibly you can, but not to dog training. That's why there's good dog trainers. And there are some that are poor and some that are mediocre, because you have to have the feeling, you have to have the connection. In many cases, police agencies were opposed to civilian dog trainers. They would say, well, Manuel's not a cop, so he shouldn't train police dogs. My answer to that is that you're a cop, you're not a dog trainer, so you shouldn't train police dogs. I have learned how to develop a dog as a tool to work with law enforcement. with an officer. The idea is to have that tool sharpened in order for him to be useful for that officer's safety and for the public safety as well. But I understand the dog better than the average officer that handles a dog, because that's my profession. To incorporate that in law enforcement is fairly easy. All I need to know is, what do you need the dog to do? And Mr. Johnson said once, if you're a good dog trainer and understand dog behavior and psychology, and the dog has the ability to do such a task, all you need to know is, what is the final goal for this dog? And we know how to shape the dog in order to perform that task. That's one of the arguments that some of the law enforcement community would have. Until this day, they try to push their business to say, well, we're cops, we know how to use a dog in law enforcement. I don't argue with that, okay? What I do argue is the fact that you won't know as much as I do, or a professional dog trainer, because that's all we do for a living. What I have seen, though, that many dog trainers, especially when it comes to the police departments, they're handlers, and they're kind of ordered to take on the canine unit. And unfortunately, they don't have the knowledge that you need in order to train the dogs at a good level. And that's mainly because they're not dog trainers, they were dog handlers. And now they're trying to become dog trainers. So they make mistakes. And I've made mistakes. I learned from those mistakes, but I have the opportunity to learn more because we train dogs 7 days a week. I'm a professional dog trainer, right? I'm not an officer. I don't have any other profession but just dog training. So we have the knowledge because we constantly experiment, right? We see what's right and what's wrong, what works, what doesn't work, and we're able to correct, some of our mistakes because, again, that's how we do. When you're a dog handler, you don't have that opportunity. When you have another job, you're limited on the exposure, on the number of dogs that you train. But the problem is that they pass on that knowledge to the next generation of handlers or trainers. And what I dislike is the fact that they stay within their system. As a professional trainer, we would see this and go, well, that's not working. Why don't you change it? Well, we don't change it because we've always done it this way. And for me, that was very frustrating. And as a trainer, I always have to improve. I cannot train the dog the same way I did last year. Why? Because I have more knowledge now and I need to apply it. But in the industry, people were very stubborn. This is the way I'm going to do it. And why? Because this is the way I was taught. Now, thank God, there's a lot of conferences. We teach at conferences. There's maybe 2 or 3 across the country that are excellent. And people have been a little bit more open-minded now, where you could talk to them a little bit more. They're willing to understand that they make a mistake. There's a better way to train a dog. Man Canine is known to be one of the few businesses in the industry that actually believes in a top control over a police dog, or ultimate control over a police dog. We're very unique in that sense that from the beginning, we always thought that in order for a dog to be obedient, you have to teach the handler. It was always the concept that back in the day was like, no, let's train the dog really well and the dog will be obedient. Well, it didn't make sense to me because unless I train the human how to communicate with the dog and what to do and not to do, the dog will get confused. So that's always been our pretty model in business or in training, is that we need to train the human as much as we can. The more the handler knows, the more educated he is, the better trained he is. When a problem arises, it's easier for him to solve, because he understands a little bit deeper on how a dog functions, his mind functions. I think in business, you have to have people that care about you, first of all, right? You want to make sure you develop a good relationship with your, you call them employees, but then after a while they become part of your family. But if they're willing to learn, we're willing to teach. For me, I want you to ask me questions. I want you to be motivated to grow. It's going to help the business if you are motivated, right? But also it helps the business that we have a good relationship. So the core group that we have, we're very fortunate with Man Canine as well as Fanjan, right? Because we have people that are dedicated. They're dedicated to serve, and they're dedicated to improve the company, the image, the service, increase quality and everything like that. And for me, it's very gratifying to see them develop into adults more and more every year that are very productive, but also that have the ability to be open-minded and to grow within. Because if you grow within as a person, the business will grow as well. The more knowledge you have, the better for the business, right? But also the better you're going to serve the client. And I've been very fortunate enough to have people that not only care about the business, but that they care about me and my family. So that I see other companies and other bosses of companies or owners complain about their personnel, but I don't. I'm very fortunate to have people that are very close to me, and that's what makes me, motivates me to get up in the morning and go work, because I'm going to be meeting these people in the next day, and hopefully they have their dreams and their goals, and I'm part of that to help them grow. Being a dog trainer, I think, on a personal level, is that I'm a lot more patient with people. In all aspects of my life, I have been more patient. I open up a little bit more. I'm able to see more detail in general. And I try to study, like I do study animal behavior, I like to study human behavior. And that has really helped me tremendously to be forgiving, right? Because I forgive a lot of the mistakes people make. I try to coach people as much as I can. I understand that nobody's perfect, just like the dogs are not perfect, but understanding that I have to be more enthusiastic at times with people, right? And it has built great relationships over the years, where I think that interconnection with the dog, that ability to feel that that relationship where it builds with an animal, has helped me be a little bit more thankful. I appreciate more relationships among people, and then also when I see a person that loves their dog, it's very endearing to me, because I think at the end it's all about love. It's all about that the connection. I know the dogs are loyal, to a degree they're loyal, but not the way we think of loyalty. But they make people happy, right? And I have felt over the years that all we're looking for as a human is to be happy, content. And an animal really brings that happiness to many families, individuals as well. It's after 46 years, first thing in the morning when I wake up, because my wife sometimes asks, are you ready to retire? You want to retire? And the answer is always, not yet. And the reason is because I love so much what I do. Just thinking about on the days that I have to go train police dogs, that it was a dream. It was a dream to have a bunch of police cars in front of me with police dogs inside of those vehicles. And I was the one responsible to develop them into good police dogs, and also develop the handler. It's so motivating that in the morning I might have some aches and pains, but it's still, you have to tie me up, not to, for me to stay in bed or just sit at home. I'm constantly thinking about the business, about dog training. Up to this day, I read magazines on dog training. I want to see other methods, techniques. My brain is nurtured by this. I get this satisfaction of being able to read about something new, some scientific experiment, or this dog training has this method or technique. But it has really, I see my life as being one of the lucky people in this world that actually gets up and loving what he wants to do. I think for me to stay home is going to be because I can't physically get up anymore. But as long as I'm able to get up, I'm happy to get up in the morning. I enjoy my wife, the family, because I believe at the end I want to be known as a good father more than a good dog trainer. I dedicate, I try to be close to the family, and that's the hardest job, obviously, to be a father, right? And it's easy. Dog training is fairly easy, but my goal is how to produce good people for this world, which are the kids, right? But I love to get up and go to work and be able to interact with the young people at work as well. We have a lot of young employees and try to push them along to be successful in life, because again, I don't want to take a lot of this knowledge. I have to get somebody, thank God my son is there, right, to take advantage of it, but also in the business world to help other people. Right now, after my age, after doing this for so many years, my goal in life is to help others be successful. No, I love every minute. I've been very, very fortunate, and to this day, I'm actually ready to grow even more and to help more people out. It's been a fun life, dealing with dogs and helping people. That's really it, because they come to you with an issue, with a problem, either law enforcement or civilian, and it's just extremely satisfying to be able to work with dogs and really create a good relationship between man and dog.